I have read the novel Lolita by the French-Russian author Vladimir Nabokov. I would like to talk about these topics in my analysis. I would like to tell you what Lolita is about, the settings and the context, the narration of the story, a characterization of Humbert Humbert, and then I will touch upon the language and the theme and my own opinion of the book. First of all, this story is about a man named Humbert Humbert who travels from France to Ramsdale in the United States. By coincidence, he ends up staying in Charlotte Hayes' house together with her prepubescent daughter, Dolores Hayes. She is throughout the story also known as Lolita or Lo by Humbert Humbert. Then Humbert marries Charlotte, who eventually finds out about Humbert's real preferences. But right after the discovery, she dies in a car crash. Humbert picks up his stepdaughter from summer camp after the death of her mother, under false pretenses that they will go visit her mother in the hospital. But obviously they never do because she's already buried at the time being. Hereafter follows a road trip for Humbert Humbert and Dolores Hayes. After rehearsals on a musical in some school, Dolores gets hospitalized and manages to escape from her stepfather. Humbert gets very upset and frustrated after the kidnapping or whatever. He starts drinking and he starts driving around with this elder woman that he meets called Rita, who is a rather dumb and naive woman and also a troubled person, like Humbert Humbert. Furthermore, Humbert Humbert gets a gun and he is setting up murderous plans of killing Lolita's kidnapper. Then one day he hears from Dolores when she is asking him for a money loan for her and her unborn baby and her new husband. When they meet, Dolores tells how it was her theater teacher who had followed them in a red cabriolet and whom helped her get out of the hospital, and that this man called Q had taken very good care of her. He seeks out this teacher and murders him brutally in his house. So that's basically it. So the settings and the context is very essential of this story. The story sets in the northeastern part of America, something like New Hampshire or Massachusetts, in the fictional city named Ramsdale. It is told in like an almost real time, since the narrator is looking back at the events that occurred in the 40s or 1950s, and the story itself is published in 1958. So it's like if he had actually written this himself, Humbert Humbert. At the time being, it was very controversial. So this quote is from Nabokov's own words about the novel. He says, Publisher C said if he printed Lolita, he and I would go to jail. So the thing is that it was a very patriarchal culture in America at the time. Not that pedophilia is okay nowadays, but we've opened up for more varieties of the sexual spectrum or whatever. And a nowadays reader like me starts off understanding and feeling empathy with the sexual offender, Humbert Humbert. And he sounds like he repents and like he just fall in love with a girl who happened to be much younger than him. But as the story slides forward, it's clear that not even our open-minded society is ready to accept something as how can I say, wrong, like this, that Humbert Humbert do. That he does, sorry. So this novel is written with a first-person narrator, that is Humbert Humbert, through his thoughts that are repeated, but develops with small variations. The reader get the feeling of being inside of his head. it clearly does something to the story that we take part in Humbert's reconsiderations and also considerations that we most of the way like somewhat follows his reflections on the topic. And it's very much Humbert's own language. Like he uses this word busybody all the time, and he addresses himself to the so-called jury. So he puts it like, so honored gentleman and lady of the jury, blah blah blah. And they are like supposed to be the receiver of the novel. And then he speaks in French sometimes. And that's especially when Nabokov wants to emphasize Humbert's like desperate despair or passionate feelings about this or that. And this leads me to the characterization of Humbert, because it is essential in this novel to like make this characterization of this crazy main character and narrator Humbert that gives the story this extra touch. He is a man who is fond of nymphets. Nymphets are these prepubescent girls with a special kind of look in their eyes, which obviously Dolores possesses. And he says himself on page 188, "For there is no other bliss on earth comparable to that of fondling a nymphet." He has this one life goal. It is to get in touch with nymphets. He doesn't care about his career or making a living or anything. It's about getting to these nymphets. Then he is very paranoid of being followed. He's acting very jealous whenever anyone is like sending Dolores looks or is interested in her. Then he has a great need for having his gun around, and then he starts drinking. Basically, he's just very insecure in himself, yeah. And he's a desperate man. He's not like this authorized like authority. Sorry, yeah. That a grown-up man should be in front of this young girl. He's desperate, and he's not sure of Lolita's way of acting and her thoughts, and he is definitely somewhat socially awkward or wrong in his mindset somehow. And he ends up threatening Lo about going to the police. He says on page 248, "You know perfectly well that what will happen and where you'll go if the police found out about our things." He puts her in this impossible and submissive position by threatening her so that he can try to get calmer with like this power that he possesses, and that what he's not obviously used to getting around normal people his own age. Yeah. Then there is the language in Lolita. Nabokov's novel is a very well written book in my opinion. It's very beautiful and well considered language. And for example, he uses alliteration. On page 333, there's an example. "For a couple of minutes, over stank, dark, dense forest." It gives the text a flow. And then he likes using this kind of picturesque way of describing the environment of the text. He talks about dandelions that are turning from suns to moons, and then also on this example, page 171, he describes the road trip. He says, "Voraciously we consumed those long highways. In rapt silence we glided over their glossy black dance floors." This kind of language makes the texts more fun to read and easier to imagine and make pictures in your head, and also comprehend the story to some extent. And I would say that the language itself is a reason to read this book. Then I've come to tell about the theme. like on the surface, through this first-person narrator, this is a book that is about unconditional, unstoppable, and maybe unrequited love. But actually, when you raise your awareness after the book is closed and everything is read, you realize that it's a book of pedophilia at its worst, and of incest, since Humbert was supposed to be her guardian and caretaker after Dolores loses her mother, but he doesn't live up to this moral duty of his. But he takes advantage of his protector role to ruin a young girl's life. Then the reader just sits back and realizes that one has just understood the mind of a pedophile. And in my opinion, the novel itself is very beautifully written, but the French sentences are hard to understand and one's mind wanders off occasionally. But the storyline is enough to just read this novel. It is so original, the idea, that it manages to get one to feel detest and repellent towards it, but also fascinated and interested by the mind of Humbert.